The beef is very simple for me. Martell got caught cheating, and then decides he's gonna drag everyone else down. He continues to make bad decisions in his life, and he blames others for his bad decisions, right?
No.
And so real talk
about the
problem is this, though. Martell always seen me as just not on the right level.
Martell Holt really thought he had everything under control. The image, the women, the lies. He believed he could juggle it all without ever losing his grip. And for a while, it looked like he was getting away with it. A wife at home holding everything together, and a side relationship he kept tucked away like a secret he'd never have to fully own. But what he didn't realize was that secrets like that don't stay buried forever. And when they come to the surface, they don't just expose one person, they drag everybody down with them. Because here's the part nobody saw coming.
To be in a happy place, I feel that everybody should be able to speak their truth, no matter what that is. Be happy, and that's what I'm going to be.
The very situation Martell created to feed his ego is the same one that would turn around and shake Arionne Curry's entire world. At first, it might have looked like Arionne was winning. That's how these situations often appear from the outside. The late-night trips, the attention, the gifts, the promises whispered behind closed doors. It creates this illusion, like she was chosen, like she had something special that the wife didn't. But what nobody talks about enough is how that kind of winning is built on unstable ground, because a relationship that starts in secrecy is already rooted in betrayal, and betrayal has a way of circling back. To really understand how everything fell apart, you have to go back to the beginning, before the public drama, before the interviews, before the social media chaos. Back when Martell and Melody looked like the perfect couple. They built a life together, a brand, a family. On the outside, everything seemed solid. They were admired, respected, and seen as an example of success. But behind that polished image, cracks were already forming. Martell wasn't satisfied, and instead of addressing that in a healthy way, he chose the easiest and most destructive route, stepping outside his marriage. That's where Arionne comes in. She didn't just stumble into this situation. Over time, she became deeply involved in Martell's life. Not publicly, not openly, but consistently. And that's what made it dangerous. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a brief lapse in judgment. This was a long-term situation, built on secrecy, emotions, and blurred boundaries. And here's where things start to get complicated, because while Martell was living a double life, Arionne wasn't just casually involved. She was investing her time, her energy, and eventually her identity into this relationship. She believed in something that was never fully hers to begin with. And that's the part people often overlook, how easy it is to get emotionally trapped in something that was never meant to be stable. But here's the twist. The same man who made her feel special was also making promises he had no intention of fully keeping. And the deeper she got, the harder it became to walk away. As the years went on, the situation didn't stay hidden. Secrets started slipping out. Rumors turned into confirmations. And suddenly, what was once private became public conversation. That's when everything shifted. Because once the world starts watching, the pressure changes. Martell was no longer just a man balancing two lives. He was now a man being exposed. And instead of taking accountability, he did what he always does. He tried to control the narrative. But control is an illusion when too many people know the truth. And that's when Arionne's position started to change. At first, she may have felt secure in her place. After all, she had his attention, his time, and eventually even a child with him. That's a level of connection that feels permanent. But what she didn't fully realize was that Martell's pattern doesn't change just because the situation does. The same traits that made him betray his wife were still there, and now they were affecting her. Because once the marriage fell apart and Melody walked away, everything that was hidden came into full view. And suddenly, Arionne wasn't the secret anymore, she was the center of attention. And that attention wasn't admiration, it was scrutiny. people started asking questions, not just about Martell, but about her choices, her involvement, and her role in everything that happened. And that's when the reality started setting in. Because it's one thing to be behind the scenes, it's another thing to face the consequences in public. And here's where things really start to unravel. Instead of stepping into a stable relationship after the dust settled, Arionne found herself in something even more uncertain, because Martell didn't suddenly transform into a loyal, dependable partner. If anything, the pressure exposed more of his inconsistencies. One minute he's present, the next minute he's distant. One moment he's making promises, the next he's contradicting them. And that back and forth creates confusion. It keeps you stuck. It makes you question what's real and what's not. That's exactly the cycle Arionne found herself in. And the more she tried to explain things publicly, the more the situation seemed to spiral. Lives, interviews, comments, it all became a window into a relationship that didn't have a solid foundation. Because here's the truth. You can't build stability on someone else's broken commitment. And what nobody expected was how quickly things would start to backfire. Instead of gaining clarity, Arionne seemed to be stuck defending a situation that wasn't giving her the security she thought it would. She talked about support, about finances, about expectations, but underneath all of that was a deeper issue: dependence. And that's where the power imbalance becomes clear. Because when one person controls the resources, the attention, and the direction of the relationship, the other person ends up waiting for decisions, waiting for consistency, waiting for something that may never fully come. And that waiting turns into frustration. Then that frustration turns into public moments, comments, complaints, subtle hints about what's really going on behind the scenes. And every time she spoke, it revealed more than she probably intended. Because instead of painting a picture of a happy, secure situation, it showed uncertainty. It showed instability. It showed a relationship that was never as solid as it was made to seem. Meanwhile, Martell continued doing what he does best, shifting narratives. One moment he acknowledges things, the next he downplays them. One moment he takes a little accountability, the next he positions himself as misunderstood. And that leaves Arionne in a difficult position. Because how do you defend someone who won't even stand consistently in the truth? How do you build something real with someone who built your entire connection on secrecy? That's the part that hits the hardest, because by the time everything is out in the open, the damage is already done. The trust issues, the public judgment, the emotional toll, it all adds up. And for Arionne, the situation that once felt like a choice started to feel like a trap. Because now it's not just about feelings anymore. It's about reputation. It's about perception. It's about trying to make sense of something that never made sense to begin with. And the emotional weight of that is heavy. Imagine investing years into something, believing it would eventually become stable, only to realize that stability was never part of the equation. Imagine defending someone publicly, only to feel unsupported privately. Imagine watching the person you stood beside continue patterns that hurt you the same way they hurt someone before you. That realization doesn't come all at once. It creeps in slowly, through conversations, through silence, through moments where actions don't match words. And when it finally clicks, it's not just disappointment, it's heartbreak mixed with regret. Because now everything is out there. The world has opinions, the situation has consequences, and there's no way to rewind time. But here's the most powerful part of all of this. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a lesson, a harsh, public, undeniable lesson about choices, consequences, and the reality of relationships built on betrayal. Because at the end of the day, Martell didn't just damage one relationship, he created a cycle. And that cycle didn't stop with Melody, It extended to Arionne, and now everyone can see it. That's why the idea of winning in a situation like this doesn't hold up, because what looks like a victory on the outside can feel like chaos on the inside. And the same man who once made promises is now the source of uncertainty. The same situation that once felt exciting is now filled with pressure. The same connection that once felt special is now questioned at every turn. And that's the reality nobody talks about enough. Because when you step into something built on betrayal, you don't just inherit the person, you inherit their patterns. And patterns don't change overnight. They repeat, they evolve, but they don't disappear without real accountability. And that's the one thing missing in all of this: real accountability. Not words, not explanations, not half admissions followed by excuses, but genuine, consistent accountability. Without that, nothing changes, and without change, history repeats itself. So now, here we are. A situation that started in secrecy is now fully exposed. A relationship that once felt powerful now looks unstable. And a scandal that once seemed one-sided has revealed its full impact, not just on one woman, but on everyone involved. Because betrayal doesn't just break one person, it creates a ripple effect. And sometimes the people who thought they were gaining something end up losing the most. That's the part that stays with you. That's the part that makes you think. Because in the end, this isn't just about Martell, and it's not just about Arionne. It's about the reality of choices, the weight of consequences, and the truth that no matter how carefully something is hidden, it always finds its way into the light.